Hi, I'm Andy Casile, and this is basically a 5-watt world video, so stick around if that's your kind of thing. I've long been fascinated by the idea of having just 2 electric guitars. The idea of having the bare minimum number of guitars to have a backup and have multiple sonic options seemed to me like a practical form of minimalism that I was really attracted to. So when Keith Williams of 5-Watt World mentioned that he was working on a 2-guitar collections video, the gears started turning in my head about how many different ways you could approach that, what the parameters are, what the options are. And the gears turned in my head enough that I thought I might have a full video on this. So I reached out to Keith on Instagram and said, hey, would you be offended if I made this video? And he said, not at all. So Keith, if you're watching this, thank you. And here we go. Here are the 5 approaches that I came up with to a 2-guitar collection and what each approach offers you. Option 1, 2 of the same guitar. Why on earth, if you could only have 2 guitars, would you pick 2 of the same guitar? As Keith has often said on his channel, beware the man with only one gun, for he'll surely know how to use it. This is the approach for someone who can get everything they need out of just a single guitar. And it might sound limiting, but really, most of our guitar heroes got by with just a single guitar, or at least a single type of guitar. While it might seem to sacrifice some versatility, this option eliminates the adjustment time between instruments and lets the player focus on pulling everything they can out of the instrument, knowing that everything is going to be in the same place time after time. There are a few different ways to approach this 2 of the same instrument collection. One is to truly have 2 of the exact same guitar. So as an example of this, I gig with a guitar player who shows up to every gig with 2 Gibson Les Pauls. And it's not just 2 Gibson Les Pauls, it has to be 2 Gibson Les Paul standard HP2s from 2018. One of these guitars is an E-flat standard, the other one is in drop D, and other than the colors and the tuning, they are exactly the same. So he knows exactly where everything is going to be at any given time. Since both instruments get used heavily throughout the set, it makes sense to invest in both of them being good and being exactly the same. At the same time, this offers him a backup that's virtually identical to what he was playing before, should one of the guitars go down for any reason. Speaking of backups, if the main reason you have the second guitar is a backup, it might make sense to spend a little bit less money on the second guitar. For instance, if your main player is a Gibson Les Paul, some offering by Epiphone or Sire might do well enough to offer you a security blanket on a gig or a session. An arrangement like this is also a good way to protect a vintage or custom instrument. For instance, if you have a custom shop or vintage guitar that you have many thousands of dollars into, maybe you don't want to take that to a jam at a local bar. The cheaper instrument can go with you to gigs and jams where you don't want to risk something happening to the more expensive instrument. Finally, if you're looking for more options, it might make sense to have the same style of guitar with a few differences. For instance, these 2 Strats are similar, but the bridge setups are different. The red one has a decked bridge, great for drop tunings and for unison bends, while the Sunburst Strat has a floating bridge for all the glorious Shimmer and Jeff Beck impersonations you might want to do. Option 2, the loyalist approach. So from the first option, the next logical step is two similar but distinct models of guitar. So staying within one brand can offer us all the variety within that brand, but oftentimes keeps us at a common scale length and construction and sometimes control layout. At the same time, the door is now open to more variety. From Fender, the most obvious choice would be a Stratocaster and a Telecaster. The two most classic designs by the company, arguably the two most classic designs ever. The two share a scale length and a lot of overlap in construction. But on the other hand, the hardtail bridge and the two single coil pickups of the Telecaster stand in stark contrast to the floating bridge and the three thinner single coils that the Stratocaster offers. If one of these guitars was your go-to, the other one would immediately put you in a new sonic space. In the Gibson world, there are a bunch of options. One great option would be to pair a semi-hollow, such as this 335, with a P90 equipped junior or special like this one. The 335 is famous for being able to do just about anything, while the Stripback Special can be seen almost as Gibson's answer to the Telecaster. At the same time, the control layout is nearly identical, and there's a significant tonal overlap, and the necks will feel similar. Option 3, one Fender, one Gibson. So I imagine this is the option that many people would have started with when thinking about the two guitar collection, and it's pretty hard to argue with. For most players with one Fender and one Gibson, they'll be able to cover pretty much all of the classic electric guitar tones that have been recorded in the last 50 years. At this point, we're dealing with different constructions and layouts between the two guitars. Even so, we can choose how different we want the two guitars to be. If you're just looking for a subtle change of pace, the Fender Telecaster is arguably the most Gibson-like of all of Fender's offerings. After all, we've all heard that the best Les Pauls are Telecasters on steroids, and vice versa. So based on that, a Telecaster and a Les Paul might make a lot of sense. And the most Fender-ish of the Les Pauls, arguably, would be one equipped with P90s, like the special that we saw in the previous option. Most players who are comfortable on one of these would be comfortable on the other, while still getting to enjoy the change of pace that the different guitars offer. If you're looking for more variety, a collection like this one might be more to your liking. The 335 and Strat feel quite different to play. Different body styles, different bridge design, different pickups. The sparkle of the Strat's three single coils provides a stark contrast to the 335's two humbuckers. Both guitars are versatile, but go about it in completely different ways. You'd be hard-pressed to find an iconic guitar tone that one of these two can't cover. Right along. Option 4, multiple personalities. I don't own examples for this option, but it's worth mentioning that you can get two guitars with way bigger differences than mainstream Gibsons and mainstream Fenders offer. And if you play in two totally different styles, this might be the option for you. For instance, there are a lot of players who have one foot in the world of traditional jazz and another one in the worlds of either fusion or progressive rock or metal. If you're one of these players, it might make sense to, rather than finding a guitar that can cover both, or two guitars that are close to each other that can cover both, picking one that specializes in one and one that specializes in the other. So, for instance, a jazz box for the traditional jazz work, and maybe some kind of super strat or something with an extended range for the more modern side of your playing. This choice does deprive you of a true backup, and the disparity might just be too much for some. But if you need that amount of breadth, this is probably the way to go. Option 5, one all-rounder and one oddball. So this final option is a different approach to the second guitar. Instead of depending on the guitars to work together to cover your sonic needs, the second guitar can act as a pinch hitter that lives in a totally different sonic space. For this approach, we do need a primary guitar that can cover all the bases. My top 2 choices for this would be a Telecaster or a 335. Your mileage may vary. For the oddball, the options are limitless. There are 12 strings, there are baritones, there are resonators, so forth. But I have arguably the perfect example of an oddball right here. This is a Harmony Bobkat. It's a department store guitar from the 60s. It has a single gold foil pickup, a wooden bridge, and a funky tremolo system. This is not a refined playing experience. The neck feels unfamiliar, the tonal options are limited, the frets need some work, and frankly, that's the point. When I picked this up, I immediately approached playing in a different way. I'll come up with parts on this that I likely wouldn't come up with on my primary guitars. Is this the most practical option? Of course not. But what this option lacks in practicality, it makes up for in joy. Playing this harmony that doesn't always do what I want it to do, where I have to react to it as much as it reacts to me, takes me back to my formative years as a player and reminds me why I picked up the guitar in the first place. There's some freedom in the fact that I'm fighting the guitar and I have to play it more simply. Despite all its quirks, I'm going to be sad to see this guitar go. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts if I missed anything in these 5 approaches. What would your approach to a 2-guitar collection be? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for sticking around till the end, and I'll see you in the next video.